Today, we're doing a completely brutal but honestly absolutely necessary mathematical breakdown. We're going to calculate the exact, unvarnished financial cost of marrying the wrong person. It's a phenomenon called the spouse tax, and trust me on this, it is way more expensive than you probably think.
Now, before anyone gets upset, let's get one thing totally straight right out of the gate. I am not here to tell you that love is just some transaction. Look, I love candlelit dinners, beach walks, and romance just as much as the next person. But if we want to truly protect our futures, we have to objectively look at the unvarnished math behind our biggest life decisions.
Here's the thing. When you get married, the state, it does not care about your custom wedding playlist. It doesn't care about your gorgeous coastal photos. To the state, marriage is a binding legal and financial merger, period. The second you say I do, your assets, your debts, your liabilities, they are legally locked together. It's a joint venture. It's basically a two-person hedge fund and a long-term liability insurance policy rolled into one. Without a doubt, it is the largest financial contract you will ever sign.
So, let's set up the foundation here. Imagine a 40-year career timeline, but we're looking at two parallel universes. In Universe A, you marry the financial co-pilot. This is someone who shares your risk tolerance and your drive for efficiency. But over in Universe B, you marry the anchor. The anchor insists on upgrading the car every 3 years, but flat out refuses to open a brokerage account. They subtly drag down your professional focus. And keep in mind, we're not even talking about a messy, expensive divorce here. No, this is just the quiet, invisible wealth you literally never generate while staying comfortably married.
All right, let's dive into the first big wealth siphon, the career drag factor. Look, earning potential is super volatile, right? It's heavily tied to your mental bandwidth and your willingness to take calculated risks. But if you have an unsupportive partner who greets your late nights at the office with icy silence, or, those emotional guilt trips, you naturally develop a defense mechanism. You start pulling your professional punches at work just to avoid the domestic friction at home. You skip that high-stakes project in Tokyo. You politely decline the executive track. And the reason this matters so much is that your 20s and 30s are your absolute peak earning growth years. Having domestic friction during this specific window, it's absolutely catastrophic to your compounding wealth.
Let's actually run the compounding math on this dynamic. Grab your calculator, because this gets wild. Say you start with a $75,000 salary. Without friction, a highly focused career secures, let's say, a 6% average annual increase. But with that career drag, you settle for a comfortable 3.5% increase, just to keep the peace. Look at the delta by year 30 and 40. The individual in Universe A earns a cumulative total of $9.3 million, while Universe B, they earn just $6.1 million.
Even after you factor in a heavy 40% blended tax rate, the net take-home career loss that just evaporates from your life is a staggering $1,920,000, almost a $2 million net loss. Gone. And remember, this isn't lottery money we're talking about here. This is money you would have earned with just a little bit of peace and an emotionally supportive bunker at home to help you wage an effective war out in the marketplace.
Okay, moving on to our second siphon, the investment paralyzer. We know that wealth is built by buying income-producing assets that grow while you sleep. But actually doing that requires you to stomach short-term market volatility, meaning you don't panic and sell everything when the market dips 10% in a single month. Well, if your partner views the stock market as just gambling, their anxiety is going to forcibly anchor your portfolio to the floor. To keep the marital bliss, you compromise. You keep your capital in cash or low-yield CDs.
Picture this. You're investing a modest $15,000 a year over 40 years. Universe A maintains an equity-heavy portfolio, yielding an exciting 8.5%. Universe B, on the other hand, compromises on highly conservative bonds and cash, dragging that return all the way down to a disappointing 5%.
So what's the actual cost of soothing your partner's irrational financial anxiety over a lifetime? $2.4 million. Yep, your partner didn't steal a single dollar from you. They simply forbade the money from growing. As it turns out, fear is an incredibly expensive luxury.
Next up is our third siphon, the lifestyle inflation leak. Look, we all know that couple, right? The ones making great money, but living paycheck to paycheck. Two leased European SUVs sitting in the driveway. This happens when you marry a status seeker, someone who prioritizes luxury goods for competitive social signaling and emotional regulation. They aren't buying the luxury car for transportation. They're buying it to soothe their own insecurities, and you are the one footing the bill.
Let's be really conservative with the math here. Suppose the financially aligned couple saves just an extra $800 a month compared to the status-inflated household, and they just let it compound in an index fund at 7.5%. Now, $800 might just seem like a couple of car payments and some nice dinners out, but over a 40-year window, it is a $1.2 million premium. That is the net drain of funding a lifelong keeping up with the Joneses tax.
Siphon number 4 brings us right back down to earth with the mundane daily stuff, the domestic overhead multiplier. You really have to frame your household as a small business. You've got supply chains, facilities management, scheduling, the whole shebang. When you marry someone who is operationally chaotic, you pay a daily grinding penalty. What does a supply chain failure in a home actually look like? Well, it's running to the expensive corner store every other day because nobody planned out the weekly groceries. It's letting the HVAC filter clog up until the whole unit just completely breaks.
When you actually break down the monthly expenses, you start to see this chaotic premium added absolutely everywhere. It's a little bit extra on disorganized groceries, unmanaged utilities, neglected home maintenance, and those easily avoidable late fees. It all adds up to a seemingly mundane, but incredibly deadly, $950 monthly leak. Sure, it doesn't sound life-altering in a single month, but remember our time machine logic here.
When you factor in standard inflation across 40 years, the lifetime wealth reduction caused by basic operational chaos locks in at $850,000, proving once and for all that living with a disorganized roommate is incredibly expensive.
Finally, we hit our 5th siphon, the entrepreneurial veto. Listen, true generational wealth rarely comes from a standard corporate salary. It comes from ownership. But ownership requires a period of extreme asymmetric risk. An asymmetric risk is simply a situation where the potential downside is small, but the potential upside, it's completely life-changing. But if your spouse demands absolute corporate certainty, they're going to exercise that entrepreneurial veto. They'll tell you it's just too risky right now. And just like that, you are permanently locked out of that life-changing upside.
Let's say over your 40-year career, you wanted to attempt 2 side ventures. One fails, costing you $20,000, but the other generates an independent $40,000 a year for the next 20 years. By vetoing both out of an abundance of caution, your partner does save you from a $20,000 failure, but they also cost you an $800,000 success. Adjusted for present value, the net opportunity cost of vetoing just one modestly successful venture is $773,000.
All right, let's take a step back and bring this all together. Here is the master receipt. Notice, it is not a single catastrophic event. It's the career drag, the investment paralyzer, the lifestyle inflation leak, the domestic overhead multiplier, and the entrepreneurial veto. And keep in mind, we haven't even factored in any extreme, highly destructive habits like secret gambling addictions or buying yachts here. This is just your average, everyday relationship friction.
And there is the devastating, unassailable grand total. $7,143,000. That is generational security, fully funded college accounts, and complete financial freedom just evaporated. It quietly disappears into thin air over a 40-year career.
So what does this all mean? Why do really smart people tolerate this massive loss? Well, the psychology behind this is absolutely fascinating. Humans are hardwired to notice sudden shocks, right? If someone broke in and stole a $10,000 Rolex from your house, you'd file a police report immediately. But if your partner's anxiety leaves $100,000 rotting in a savings account, losing $5,000 a year to inflation, you don't feel a thing. It's just a quiet Tuesday. Furthermore, this incompatibility usually masquerades as moral debates. You've probably experienced this. One person is labeled cheap, while the other is labeled irresponsible. We do that rather than acknowledging what it really is, a mathematical bleed.
But hey, there is a solution. If you're dating or single, you have a distinct advantage right now. You have the power to run a rigorous pre-commitment financial diagnostic before signing that lifetime merger. These conversations are literally the cheapest ones available because the alternative is having them decades later when absolutely everything is on the line.
Here are 3 non-negotiable diagnostic questions you absolutely must ask, looking right past the romantic chemistry. Number 1, what is their emotional relationship with debt? Number 2, how do they react to career risk and volatility? And number 3, what does comfort actually look like to them when they're stressed? You don't even need a spreadsheet for this. Just watch what they do. Do they take a walk when they're stressed out, or do they drop $400 online? These answers reveal a partner's true operating system. Because when you flip the script, you realize that an aligned co-pilot doesn't just save you from the tax. No, they act as a massive economic supercharger. When you're aligned, you drastically reduce your operational overhead. You can comfortably live on one salary and heavily invest the second. Your home becomes a fortress, And your investment strategy, it becomes entirely immune to panic.
So by all means, chase the romance, enjoy the sunsets, and those amazing dinners out. But remember, when the guests leave the wedding, you are left running an economic enterprise. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. Will you choose a business partner to build an empire with, or someone who charges a $7 million premium just to stand still? Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.